Hello and welcome to Top Deck. Today we are going to be looking at the deck I built in a draft that I did recently, as well as open up the prizes I won at the end. So let's get into it, shall we? While I was away, I got to go and partake in an Aetherdrift draft. An Aetherdrift, if you will. This was my first time drafting Aetherdrift, and I actually haven't drafted a whole lot before either. So I did what I thought was a good plan. I read an article about drafting the set. Essentially, the article said white was bad, green was good, Golgari midrange was really good, Boros was terrible, and Simic exhaust was pretty decent. Also, removal is super important in this format. So that's the information I had going in. So we sit down, we open our first packs, and my pack one pick one stares me right in the face. It's Riptide Gearhulk. It's an Azorius Mythic Rare. I was really excited about it because, boom, bomb rare. I was also nervous. I was going to screw something up because any good drafter will tell you to not marry your first pick. Therefore, my second pick was a nice and conservative Rangers Refueler. It was a choice between either this or another Azorius Uncommon. I chose Refueler because I wasn't sure I wanted to go all in on Azorius just yet, and Refueler let me stay pretty open to Simic Exhaust, which, if you remember, was on my radar for being pretty okay. So, you know how I just said don't marry your first pick? Well, I didn't do that. I married my third pick instead. Enter Sita Varma, payoff for Simic Exhaust. I took that as a sign to go all in on Simic and maybe Splash for Gearhulk, and so the remainder of my picks revolved around picking up as many exhaust cards as possible. I will include the full list in the video description because I can tell like my camera's misbehaving today. Nothing is really showing up well. I am sorry about that. But the entire deck list will be in the video description. To my credit, I got a fair number of exhaust cards, like Keen-Eyed Buccaneer and Stampeding Scurryfoot. The only things I were missing and things that I held out for long into Pack 3 for the Simic Exhaust deck were Elvish Refueler and Sky Serpent Seeker. Elvish Refueler lets you use exhaust abilities over and over again, and the Serpent lets you exhaust it to go and find multiple lands to put on directly on the battlefield from your deck, and those are really good payoffs for this deck that I just didn't get past. So that's where I'm at as we go into deck building. I ended up cutting the Gearhulk because it just did, the mana would have been really awkward. I didn't pick up any good fixing for it. This is unlikely to shock anyone, but I really should have just gone all in on this Gearhulk and Azorius. I would have had the color pair all to myself, I would have had access to rides and Transit Mage, multiple hull drifters, as well as a couple other good vehicles. Also, my curve would have had more big mana spells, so I would have included more lands too. That will be important later. Moral of the story, as we will soon see, I had to learn this hard way, was rely on the cards that are in front of you. Do not try to force something that other people say is good just because they say it's good. So we head to round 1, and I get paired against a Gruul aggro deck. I had to mulligan to 5 to find lands. Meanwhile, my opponent's deck was full of beefy critters and pump spells that made all of my blocks bad, like all of them. Their best creature was a 5-mana 8/8 dinosaur that I managed to get rid of with a quadruple block. I think I played reasonably okay that game, even though I lost. I just had the unfortunate luck of being stuck on 3 lands most of the game while drawing only cards with only 4 mana or up. I did eventually manage to draw a 4th land and prolong my death by exhausting some Stampeding Scurryfoots, but the game was pretty much over at that point. Game 2, I play another reasonable game. The lands didn't stick me as bad in Game 1. I actually got into a boat race with my opponent and got them down to 9 life before they unleashed a fury of pump spells to put me to 4. That whole game, they played only a pair of vanilla 3/2s, so I actually ended up holding this pair of Flood the Engines the entire game. I didn't really want to run my 3-mana removal spells onto 2-mana creatures since I knew there were 8/8s and 5/5s waiting in the wings for me. My final turn of the game, I make a gutsy attack that was probably stupid in hindsight, but I left 3 blockers back and was just angling that they had run out of pump spells and were just down to critters. It turns out they had even more pump in hand, and they had enough pump to kill me even if I didn't attack and had all 5 creatures left to block. So I wasn't terribly upset overall with that loss. They had a good deck. They had my number. Round 2, the Elvish Refueler, the Serpent I mentioned earlier, and Sita Varma all managed to get on the battlefield at the same time. They were just on my opponent's field. That's right, my opponent and I were in a mirror match. We had just split the exhaust payoffs, and each of us ended up getting a Sita Varma. Much like round 1, I got run over. My opponent had the nut draw, they found all of their payoffs, and I just couldn't compete with that. I did have a strong start to the game, but I got stuck on 2 lands again. I had to mulligan to 5 again, just to find those ones. I don't think I went an entire game, this entire draft, where I didn't have to mulligan to find lands. Keep in mind, I did have 16 lands in my deck. I learned later that it should have been 17, but even factoring that in, I still had a really terrible mana screw. So, we moved to Game 2. At the beginning of Game 2, I had a great hand. It was probably about as good as I could want. Unfortunately, I accidentally picked up 8 cards in my opening hand. I brought this up to my opponent, and he said it was no big deal, just take a mulligan. However, I ended up being so mad at myself for making such a dumb mistake and on how that last game went that I tilted out a bit. I didn't say anything mean to my opponent or anything like that, but he could tell I wasn't having a good time. I kept a 1-lander, made some really dumb gameplay decisions. It was bad. I am truly ashamed of where my headspace ended up for that match. One of the reasons I started this channel was to become a better sport when I lose, and for the most part I have. But it was a big step back in that moment. That match was just an all-around bad performance on my part. And after a brief interlude that I used to calm down, I met my 3rd round of opponent. Neither of us had won a game all day. The winner would get a coveted prize pack, and the winner was me. I earned this back. There isn't actually a whole lot to say this round because my opponent was playing a 4-color pile of cards and none of them worked together. Both games were effectively over by turn 4. Both games I somehow managed to go turn 1 Scurryfoot into turn 2 Ranger's Refueler, into turn 3 Sita Varma, turn 4 exhaust the Scurryfoot, and then after that I exhausted the Ranger's Refueler. And I just outran my opponent with that. Meanwhile, my opponent managed to play Lumbering Worldwagon, pass. So this was a good proof of concept match for my deck, but a bit of a non-game for my opponent. He wasn't too sad at the end though. The store owner gave him a consolation prize pack, and he opened 2 mythic rares. I think he got the Aether Spark and the Rakdos Gearhulk, so he was quite happy. So overall, for me, this draft was a C or a C-. I'm giving myself a C+ in deck design. In hindsight, I should have gone for Azorius, and I should have made a better mana base to boot. It's an automatic F in sportsmanship for getting mad at all. This is a card game. I shouldn't be getting mad about it whatsoever. But for gameplay, I think I did B-level work. My play was fairly defensible outside of round 2, game 2. So now let's open the pack like a bunch of you have been waiting for. Alright, this is the longest I've been without actually opening a pack in my possession. Here we go. Alright. Alright. So we've got the art card. That looks pretty neat. We've got Blossoming Sands, Collision Course, and our rare is Caradora, Heart of Alacria. I have no idea how you pronounce that. And then we've got Voyager Glidecar as another rare. We've got Racer's Scoreboard, Rise from the Wreck, Grease Wrench Goblin, Stall Out, Scrap Compactor, Pactile Terror, Bestow Greatness, Swiftwing Assailant, Thunderhead Gunner, I actually kind of like this card, and a Nimble Thopterist. Alright, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed that. We did get 2 rares, nothing to sneeze at. I mean, not the best pack ever, but pretty decent. So, with that, please remember to subscribe to watch my drafting skills get much, much better as time goes on. Other than that, have a great day, everyone. See you around.